Hello everyone, Bogdan Bratis from Saspod here. This is gonna be a practical one because today I'm gonna show you exactly how you can remove background noise from a podcast. Now, many people record podcasts, especially remotely, and sometimes we don't have control over how much noise is into that recording, and you need to go ahead with the recording anyway. And then once you listen to it, lots of background noise and it sounds unpleasant and is really not good for the listening experience for your audience. And there are two ways of removing background noise, and we're going to explore both of them today. One is going to be using the traditional method. That's something that I still use even to this day because it's actually the most transparent method and I really like it. In terms of what results you get using that method. And obviously there is now the AI, the artificial intelligence way of doing it as well, which is really, really simple. Anybody can do it, but of course you don't have as much control, and it's sometimes a hit and miss approach as well to removing the noise from a podcast. Also, it does more to the audio than you might want to do. It's probably not a best choice for, let's say, somebody that does this professionally. Now, why should we remove background noise from our audio? One of the things that there's a debate online about is that, just record a podcast and put it out there on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts and everybody's gonna listen to it no matter what. Well, it doesn't happen like that. Many people just will turn off a podcast if the podcast doesn't sound good enough. It needs to have a certain standard in order for it to be listenable. If the audio is really noisy, I won't be able to listen to it and I will just stop the podcast. I'm going to move on with my life or listening to something else. So it's important to appear professional. We can also talk about the audio branding aspect as well. If you're a brand and you want to come across as professional, you want to make sure that you sound as good as possible. You really don't want to sound like you are in a big cave or I don't know, lots of noise in the background, kids screaming in the background, the laptop is running like crazy and there's lots of noises coming out of it. You want to come across as somebody that has figured out how to create good content and people to have a great experience watching you and listening to you as well. So that's why we want to remove the background noise from a podcast. So before I move on with the actual tutorial, I would like to ask you to maybe find a pair of headphones around your house and just make sure that you listen to these using headphones, because there's going to be certain subtle details we're going to talk about, and they may not be as apparent if you listen to these on your laptop speakers or on regular speakers. You want to have clear sound so you can kind of like understand what I mean. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So like I mentioned at the start of the video, we're going to use two methods to remove background noise from a podcast. The first one, the traditional method, I'm going to use two different softwares. So the first one is Audacity. You may be familiar with this one because we uploaded a tutorial about that a few weeks ago on how to edit a podcast with Audacity. And the second one is iZotope RX, which is a very advanced software. It is very expensive. It's not free like Audacity, and it can obviously do more than what I'm going to show you in this tutorial, but some people may have access to that software and it may be useful for you to explore that. So let's get into Audacity. So what we need to do is add a file in Audacity to start with. So I have here an example from my own podcast, and this recording took place remotely, and I had no control over the amount of background noise happening in that recording because the guest was in its own room, and obviously there is background noise happening there. And you may see that my view of Audacity is a little bit different than what you might be used to. That's because I activated something called a spectrogram. Now, spectrograms are in all sorts of different software. So you can find these, for example, in iZotope Rex, the one that we're going to explore after this. And then also you may find these in Premiere Pro as well, if you are familiar with that software instead. And you see, you can activate this using this button. So you can just do this, and then you're going to see the spectrogram. So you can have this as multi-view. So you can have just the spectrogram by itself, or you can have the waveform by itself, or you can have both of them at the same time, which I prefer because I like to see as much information as possible from an audio. And what you're going to notice here, you're going to see that here is basically silence. Well, not really silence, because there's where the background noise is apparent. And then obviously we have the dialogue over the noise as well. And you can see when the dialogue kicks in, there's a lot more information here. So I'm just going to describe exactly what you are looking at, because this may look a little bit intimidating to you. So let me guide you through it a little bit. On the top version, so here, what we see is the amplitude, right? That's what we see. So the bigger the spikes, the more amplitude the audio has, and that tells us how loud the audio is. And that's pretty much the information we get. Obviously, you can get frequency as well from this view, from the top view, but it's not as apparent. It doesn't give us an easy way to understand frequency, because frequency, it's all about the movement of the audio. The faster the audio moves, the higher the frequency. And the problem is that you cannot really see this through this waveform. So that's why in audio we have something called a spectrogram, where we can see not only the amplitude, but we can also see frequency as well on a time scale, which is really, really handy. So for example, the darker the colors in the spectrogram, the quieter the audio, right? So that represents amplitude. So for example, in this black part from here, you're going to have less information. So it's going to be quieter. There's not going to be much. And as you can see on this waveform as well, you will see the same thing displaying there. So as you can see, the ones that are yellow towards white, there is where most of the energy of the audio actually happens. So kind of like this gives us the amplitude. So the color gives us the amplitude. Now, if you want to see frequency, and you can see here, there is from 0K to about 8K. That gives us the frequency. So for example, these parts from here, right, which are brighter, they represent the fundamental of my voice, so the lower end of my voice. And the parts here at the top, they will represent mostly the higher frequencies that my voice generates. So for example, the S's, the consonants. So the higher you go in frequency, you're going to hear that the audio sounds much thinner. What you want to do in this instance, when removing noise, we want to remove only the noise and not the actual dialogue, because dialogue is useful. We want to keep that, but the dialogue is on top of the noise, and there's no way for us to separate this, only if we use certain techniques, which I'm going to show you in a second. Let's play it. You're going to hear the noise profile. This is how it sounds like. So it's the background noise from that room, and then you will see that the dialogue starts in right here.
Well, I recommend joining our free community at Y.
Right. So, and you can see the noise, you can hear the noise behind the voice as well, which is not really pleasant. So let's correct that. So what you want to do is make sure that you choose only the noise as a profile. You go to effects, and then you go to noise reduction, and then get noise profile. Once you've done that, you will select the entire audio, you go back to effects, and then you go to noise reduction again, and then you have noise reduction 32. Now this is the amount of noise reduction you're going to do. This is how sensitive the plugin will be regarding that noise. What you will see when you apply, for example, just as the default settings, for example, what you're going to get is you see that the background noise now is completely removed.
Well, I recommend joining our free community.
However, I'm listening to it and I can already see that it actually removes some of the dialogue as well. So it made the dialogue a little bit wobbly, I will call it. And you can experiment with this as much as you want. So you can press Control Z or Command Z on Mac, and then you can experiment a little bit more. But the more you go into play with it, you're gonna find what works for what scenario. Usually I don't use Audacity for these myself because I do have access to iZotope X, which is a much better software, but this will do just a fair enough job. So you can experiment with the amount of reduction and the sensitivity and all these different settings. And that's what I would do to remove the noise from a recording. Now, let's go into iZotope X and show you how you can do that there as well. So in iZotope X, it will look very similar. So as you can see, what's in Audacity is going to be here as well in terms of the way the spectrogram looks like. It's just that we see the audio, the amplitude on top of the spectrogram. So you can do this like that. And then what you can do is, for example, find a clean part, clean audio, where we have just the noise. And then you can use something called spectral denoise, learn, like here. And then you can play with the settings and then you can render that setting. And then you're going to see that the noise has become quieter because it's darker in color. And the dialogue is maintained. The dialogue is not changing, which spectral denoise in iZotope X is a much advanced tool, and it will create a better result, in my opinion. That's why I pay about $1,000 to have the license for this. This is pretty much how we would do it with a traditional approach. Now, one thing that I must mention, there are other tools out there. You can experiment with different tools, but the principle is the same. So no matter what you use, you may use Premiere Pro or Adobe Audition or other software that have a similar feature, it will work the same. The technology is exactly the same. It's just, it may look a little bit different and may have a few extra settings here and there for you to play with, but the idea is basically the same. So we take a blueprint of the noise and then we apply that blueprint to remove the noise, to extract that noise from the recording. That's it. Now let's go into the AI, which I think is quite an interesting development into the noise removal technology. And I'm going to show you how this works. This is really, really, really simple. So you drag and drop a file in here. You wait for that to upload, and then you wait for Adobe Enhance. It's called now it's called Adobe Podcast. It changed the name over the last few years, 1 or 2 years. It started as a free version in the beginning, but now you need to pay about $10. I'm lying, £10 a month, something like that. So that's about $15 a month to have access to it. And then you can upload files that are up to 1 hour long. So if you have a longer file, you can cut it in two, and then you can upload the two files as separate files. And then you have access to the speech. So for example, if you say more, that means the only thing that you're gonna hear is the result from the tool. So you're not gonna have a mix between the original version and the actual result that this tool generated. And then also this is the background. So you might want this to be as low as possible. If you want a more natural result, you might want to play around with this. And then you can preview the file right here in the browser.
Well, I recommend joining our free community at yt4free.com. That's YT.
Right, so you can listen to it. It sounds pretty good. It doesn't sound bad. However, I do hear it that it's AI from this point. It does more to the audio than actually removing background noise. It also adds a little bit of compression, and it changes the frequency spectrum of the voice. Now, this may be good if you really deal with bad audio where there's no way you can do anything with a traditional method. And this would probably save your life in some instances where I had an opportunity to work with really, really bad audio. And I used this tool to see if I can salvage the audio in some ways. And it actually did a decent job. And then what you can do is then maybe use a mixture between this tool and your traditional method, and then you can combine the results. That's a more advanced way of doing it, and maybe you can get a better result that way. So I hope you found this video useful. I just wanted to show you exactly how this technology works, and kind of like give you a sneak peek into what we do here at Saspod, because if you want to get your podcast to the next level, you couldn't be bothered working with these tools. And obviously there are other things to audio than just removing noise from an audio. And obviously we do work with video production as well. Get in touch with us if you want the professionals to deal with this, and we're going to make that happen. There's going to be a link in the description where you can learn more about my services, and I look forward to chat with you. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.